Lonely CEO hired her out of pity, but she became the only person he could trusted. The neon sign of Eddie's 24/7 flickers, bleeding harsh red light onto the rain-slicked pavement. Inside, the diner smells of stale grease, bleach, and burnt coffee. In the corner booth, Marcus stares out the rain-streaked window. His tailored suit costs more than the diner makes in a month, but his tie is ripped loose, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. He presses his phone tight against his ear. "I don't care what the truth is, David," Marcus says. His voice is a low, flat gravel. A metallic voice murmurs on the other end. Marcus rubs his temple, his jaw tightening. "No, you pay the publisher. You buy the editor. You bury the story so deep it forgets how to breathe." Another pause from the lawyer. "Just do it," Marcus snaps. "Bury it. Exactly like my ex-wife buried me in family court." He kills the call, tosses the phone onto the sticky table. 50 stories up in his glass office, he's the fixer the elite call when their worlds catch fire. An offshore oil spill, a senator's midnight DUI, a tech billionaire's hidden fraud. Marcus is the crisis manager who buys the silence, blackmails the press, and scrubs the headlines clean. He manufactures reality for a living. But down here, at 2 in the morning, he's just a man who isn't legally allowed to see his own daughter. He looks up as a shadow falls over his table. Elena approaches with a pot of coffee. She wears a faded diner uniform, but her posture holds the stiff remnants of someone who used to stand proudly in lecture halls. A former historian, stripped of her credentials, now pouring decaf for insomniacs. She doesn't meet his eyes. Her gaze is detached, anchored to an invisible spot just past his shoulder. "Refill?" she asks. Her voice is entirely empty. "Just the check," Marcus replies. Before Elena can reach for her notepad, a drunk patron stumbles backward, slamming hard into her shoulder. The tray slips. Thick ceramic mugs shatter violently against the cracked linoleum. Scalding coffee splatters across her shoes. The diner goes dead quiet. The fry cook stops scraping the grill. Everyone waits for the reaction. The sudden tears. The panicked apologies. Elena does none of those things. She slowly drops to her knees in the brown puddle. Her face remains completely blank. Mechanically, she begins gathering the jagged shards. A sharp piece of porcelain slices deep into her palm. Blood wells up instantly, dripping down her wrist. She doesn't flinch. She just keeps picking up the broken pieces, letting her hand bleed. Marcus watches her. The air leaves his lungs. He isn't looking at a clumsy waitress. He is looking at a mirror. That exact, terrifying numbness, the quiet acceptance of pain. The way she holds the shattered pieces with bleeding hands, it perfectly reflects his own shattered mind. Elena stands up, clutching the ruined mugs. She finally shifts her gaze and meets his eyes, just for a second. Two ghosts, recognizing each other in the neon-lit dark. Marcus stands up. He doesn't offer a napkin. He doesn't ask if she's okay. That would be too human. He pulls out a crisp $100 bill and slaps it onto the wet table. On top of it, he drops his heavy, matte black business card. "Be at this address tomorrow at 9, Marcus says. His tone is cold, strictly transactional. Elena stares down at the card. "For what?" "I have a basement full of garbage that needs sorting," he says. He doesn't wait for an answer. He turns and walks out into the pouring rain. The lobby of the 5-1-story building is entirely glass and pristine marble. Elena stands in the center, her shoes still squeaking from last night's rain. She holds the matte black business card between two bandaged fingers. The executive assistant eyes Elena's faded coat. "Mr. Vance left this for you?" "Yes," Elena says. "He said he had garbage to sort." The assistant crosses her arms. Why hire a diner waitress to handle highly confidential corporate archives? Elena looks at her, pale but perfectly calm. "Because I found an eviction notice on my door this morning. I need the cash to survive. I don't care about corporate secrets, and I don't ask questions. That makes me cheap and quiet. Do you want me to leave, or give me the key?" The assistant pauses, pulling a heavy brass keycard from her desk. "Sub-basement level 4, she says, her tone cold. "Box the financial records by year. Shred all personal correspondence." "All of it?" Elena asks. "Cataloged or indexed first?" "He wants them gone," the assistant snaps. "You are paid to be a human shredder. Just destroy it." After a long descent underground, the heavy steel door of the lowest sub-basement clicks shut. The deadbolt engages automatically. The room smells like damp concrete and decaying paper. The windowless room smells of damp concrete and decaying paper. Flickering fluorescent lights illuminate 50 heavy cardboard boxes, stacked like headstones in the center. Elena slices the first box open, sits on the cold floor, and turns on the industrial shredder. It hums, loud and hungry. She pulls out a handful of papers. She should drop them in, get paid, go home. But she stops. Her fingers brush thick, cream-colored parchment. Muscle memory takes over. She isn't a waitress right now. She's an archivist. "Confidential settlement," she reads over the shredder's mechanical hum. She flips the pages, scanning the dense legal text. She stops at the final clause. Mr. Vance waives all public defense regarding the allegations. Subject retains full primary custody. Frowning, she digs deeper into the box. She pulls out a sealed police report, a midnight driving arrest, a crashed car, but the driver isn't Marcus Vance. "Sarah Vance," Elena whispers. She hits the power button on the shredder. The machine spins down into heavy silence. "You took the hit." Elena tells the empty room. "You let the press call you a monster so they wouldn't find out your ex-wife was driving drunk. You bought their silence to protect your daughter." She sets the file carefully on the concrete. A new stack. She pulls another folder. Medical records. "Diagnosis: severe trauma-induced insomnia," she reads aloud. "Patient, quote, if I sleep, I lose control. If I lose control, they take her away." Elena leans her head back against the cold wall, closing her eyes. Sorting this chaos feels strangely safe. Making sense of his ruined life means she doesn't have to think about how her mentor stole her work and destroyed her academic career. Fixing his mess is easier than facing hers. She reaches into the bottom of the box. Her fingers brush against something soft. Not a contract. A piece of yellow construction paper. A crayon drawing of a tall stick figure holding hands with a tiny one. In the corner, shaky child's handwriting reads, "For Daddy." It is folded and refolded, worn soft at the edges, carried in a pocket for years before being buried in the dark. Elena traces the edge of the drawing. The tightness in her chest shifts. "You dictate reality for the whole world up there," she murmurs, carefully smoothing the wrinkled paper against her knee. "But you threw your soul away down here." The harsh fluorescent hum of sub-basement level 4 is gone. In its place, a single brass desk lamp casts a warm amber circle across a makeshift plywood table. The heavy steel door unlocks with a loud clack. Marcus steps inside, loosening his tie. It is 1:15 a.m. His phone is vibrating relentlessly in his coat pocket. Another reporter. Another angry board member. He freezes. The room is no longer a graveyard of scattered secrets. It is an archive. 50 heavy cardboard boxes are arranged in perfect chronological columns. Crisp white labels face outward. Litigation, 2018 to 2021. Tax disclosures, medical vouchers. Elena sits within the circle of yellow light. She is carefully placing a faded photograph into an acid-free archival sleeve. "I told my assistant to have you shred everything," Marcus says, his voice rough. Elena doesn't look up. "Your assistant doesn't know the difference between a tax liability and a historical asset. It's not history. It's my garbage." "It's a timeline," she corrects, sliding the sleeve into a manila folder. "You can't erase a timeline just by running it through a machine. It leaves gaps." Marcus walks further into the room. The air down here is usually suffocating, but tonight It just feels quiet, ordered. He leans back against a stack of boxes and pulls his vibrating phone from his pocket. The screen lights up his face in a pale, sickly blue. Text from Sarah, do not come tomorrow. You are not seeing her for her birthday. If you show up, I am calling security. Marcus stares at the words. The screen goes black. His breathing hitches, a sharp, ragged sound. He dropped his phone. It fell onto the concrete floor with a loud crash. He panicked, gripping the edge of the plywood table so tightly his knuckles turned white. His chest heaved violently, but he couldn't breathe. No, Marcus gasps, staring at the floor. Not today, not. His knees buckle. He slides down the side of the table, hitting the cold floor hard. He pulls frantically at his collar, tearing a button off his expensive shirt. His eyes are wide, unseeing. Elena stops sorting. She doesn't gasp. She doesn't grab her phone to call 911. She has survived enough of her own panic attacks in cramped academic offices to know that an ambulance only brings more eyes, more shame. She stands up slowly. She walks over and sits on the concrete floor, exactly 3 feet away from him, close enough to anchor him, far enough to respect the invisible wall he built around himself. Look at the floor, Marcus, Elena says. Her voice is low, steady, and entirely devoid of pity. Marcus is choking on dry air, his hands shaking violently against his knees. I can't. My chest. Elena reaches up to the table. She grabs a thick, heavy stack of financial files, cold from the basement air. She slides it across the floor until it touches his hand. Press your hand flat against the paper, she instructs. Feel how cold it is. Marcus blindly presses his palm against the smooth, freezing cardboard. 4 seconds in, Elena says, setting a slow, deliberate rhythm. Hold for 4, out for 6. She won't let me, he chokes out. The timeline isn't moving right now, Elena interrupts, her voice cutting sharply through his spiraling thoughts. It's just paper and concrete. 4 seconds in. Do it. Marcus forces a jagged breath through his teeth. He holds it. He exhales, a long, trembling sigh. They sit there in the dim amber light, a multi-millionaire CEO in a ruined suit and a disgraced historian in a faded apron. 5 minutes pass, then 10. The violent shaking in his shoulders slowly subsides. Marcus slumps back against the boxes, exhausted. The adrenaline crash leaves him hollow. He closes his eyes. I'm losing my mind, he whispers. Elena looks at him. Just breathe. Elena says quietly, her voice echoing softly off the bare walls. There are 50 floors crushing down on us up there, but down here no one can see you. You are allowed to fall apart. She doesn't touch him. She doesn't offer a platitude. She just turns her attention back to the files, giving him the one thing the world above never did, the dignity of his own silence. The heavy steel door swings open. Marcus stops at the threshold. Elena is sitting at the plywood table under the amber lamp. In front of her is a polished mahogany box. It looks wildly out of place among the rotting cardboard and damp concrete. She is holding a piece of heavy, cream-colored stationery. Put that down, Marcus says. The sudden, sharp edge in his voice cuts through the quiet room. Elena doesn't flinch. She looks at the paper, then up at him. You put it in the shred pile. It's private. He strides across the room, snatching the letter from her hand. It's a press release, Elena says flatly. Marcus freezes. He glares down at her, his posture rigid. Excuse me? I read 3 of them, Elena says, gesturing to the open box on the table. They're all addressed to your daughter, and they are all completely unreadable. Marcus's jaw tightens. The ruthless CEO mask slams back into place. You are a diner waitress I hired out of pity to sweep my floors. Do not presume you have the right to analyze my life. I'm an archivist, Elena corrects, her voice calm and dangerously steady. I spend my life reading the letters of dead politicians, desperate soldiers, and failed generals. I know what a cover-up looks like. She stands up, matching his gaze. She isn't intimidated by the expensive suit or the towering height. Look at what you wrote. Elena points to the letter crushed in his fist. Maya, circumstances have dictated our current separation, but please understand I am optimizing my schedule to facilitate future visitations. She pauses, letting the sterile, corporate words hang in the cold air. You're speaking to a little girl, Marcus, not a board of directors. Marcus grips the paper tighter. I am trying to protect her. If her mother's lawyers intercept these... You're protecting yourself, Elena interrupts. The silence in the basement becomes suffocating. Nobody speaks to Marcus Vance like this. His own executives tremble when he raises an eyebrow. But Elena just stands there, holding her ground. You write these letters to feel like a good father, Elena says, her tone losing its combative sharpness, softening into something fiercely empathetic. But you use big words and passive voice so you don't have to admit the one thing that actually matters. Marcus stares at her. The anger drains out of him in an instant, replaced by a sudden, terrifying exhaustion. He sinks into the chair opposite her. What do you want me to say? He asks. His voice is stripped of all authority. It is barely a whisper. The truth, Elena says. She reaches across the table, pulls a blank piece of paper from a fresh ream, and slides it toward him. She places a cheap plastic pen on top of it. Marcus looks at the pen like it's a loaded weapon. I don't know how, he says. Yes, you do. Strip away the PR. Strip away the crisis management. Elena steps closer, leaning over the table. What is the absolute worst thing you could admit to her right now? Marcus stares at the blank page. The fluorescent lights hum faintly somewhere in the ceiling above them. That I failed, he says, his voice cracking. That I took the blame for her mother's accident because I thought it would save our family, and instead, I lost her entirely. Good, Elena says quietly. Now, write that. Marcus picks up the pen. His hand is trembling. He hovers over the paper. It's too heavy, he whispers. She's just a kid. Then make it simpler, Elena guides him, her voice a steady anchor in his storm. What do you feel when you wake up in the morning and her room is empty? Marcus swallows hard. He presses the pen to the paper. He writes 5 words. I miss you. I'm sorry. He drops the pen. He stares at the page as if he has just cut his own chest open. Elena reaches over and gently pulls the paper away. She folds it carefully, slips it into a fresh envelope, and writes Maya on the front. She slides it back across the table. Send this one, she says. Marcus looks at the sealed envelope. Then, slowly, he looks up at Elena. He doesn't see a broken waitress anymore. He doesn't see a pitiful charity case. He sees a woman who just walked straight through his impenetrable armor, disarmed his deepest fears, and treated him like a human being instead of a monster or a machine. For the first time in 10 years, Marcus Vance fully trusts another person. The concrete of the parking garage is cold and damp. Elena walks toward her rusted sedan, her keys clenched tight between her knuckles. It is a defensive habit she developed after losing everything. A sleek black town car idles near the exit. As Elena approaches, a man steps out of the shadows. He wears a tailored cashmere coat. Dr. Elena Rostova, the man says. Elena stops dead in her tracks. No one has called her by that title in 3 years. I am Richard Sterling, he says, stepping into the dim overhead light. CEO of Sterling Communications. I believe we have a mutual acquaintance in Marcus Vance. Let me buy you a cup of coffee. 10 minutes later, they are sitting in a hollow, brightly lit diner across the street. Richard doesn't touch his mug. Elena keeps her coat on, her posture rigid. Your dissertation on industrial-era labor corruption was brilliant, Richard says smoothly, resting his elbows on the table. It is a tragedy that Professor Evans put his name on your research. Elena's jaw tightens. She stares at the black surface of her coffee. How do you know about that? It is my job to know, Richard replies. I know you tried to report him to the academic board. I know he hired an aggressive legal team, accused you of plagiarism, and had your credentials permanently revoked. And I know you are currently $70,000 in debt, working as a human shredder for a man who bought you with spare change." Elena does not blink. "What do you want, Richard?" He reaches inside his coat and pulls out a thick, heavy envelope. He slides it across the sticky table. $250,000 in untraceable cashier's checks, Richard says quietly, and a guaranteed adjunct professorship at Columbia University, starting next semester. The Dean of Humanities owes me a favor. Your name gets cleared. You get your life back. Elena looks down at the envelope. Her heart hammers violently against her ribs. It is not just money. It is her dignity. It is the academic career she bled for. It is the end of the suffocating, crushing weight of failure. "What is the price?" she asks, her voice barely a whisper. "Apex Chemical," Richard says, leaning closer. "They are Marcus Vance's biggest client. They have been dumping toxic runoff into public reservoirs for 5 years. Vance knows. He buried the environmental reports in sub-basement level 4, file 8B. Elena's mind races. She saw that exact file yesterday. It is sitting in a gray archival box, 3 feet from the desk where Marcus sat across from her and wrote a letter to his daughter. "I just need you to walk file 8B out the front door tomorrow evening," Richard says. "Leave it on the passenger seat of my car. That is it." Elena stares at the envelope. Her fingers tremble slightly. "You are hesitating," Richard observes, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Why? Loyalty?" "Marcus Vance covers up poison in the public water supply. He is a corporate mercenary. He didn't hire you because he respects you, Elena. He hired you because you were broken, desperate, and cheap." Richard pauses, letting the brutal words sink in. "Society threw you away," he continues. "Why go down with a sinking ship when you can finally save yourself?" He is right. Every word he says is the absolute, undeniable truth. Marcus is guilty. She owes him nothing. He bought her time with pity. One stolen file, and her nightmare is over. Richard stands up, buttoning his coat. He leaves the envelope on the table. "You have 24 hours, Dr. Rostova." He walks out of the diner, the bell above the door chiming softly in his wake. Elena sits alone under the harsh fluorescent lights. Slowly, she reaches out. Her bandaged fingers rest heavily on the thick envelope. She closes her eyes, and she does not push it away. The heavy steel door of sub-basement level 4 doesn't just open. It slams against the concrete wall. Marcus storms into the amber light. His breathing is jagged. His tie is gone. In his clenched fist is a glossy security printout. Elena and Richard Sterling sitting together in a diner at 3 a.m. Elena looks up from the sorting table. "Marcus, what?" He doesn't look at her. He marches straight to the 2019 to 2021 client litigation stack. He kicks a box out of the way. It tears open, spilling 10 years of financial records across the cold floor. "Where is it?" Marcus snarls. He rips the lid off another box. Folders fly into the air, scattering like dead leaves. "Marcus, stop." Elena steps forward. "What are you looking for?" He spins around, closing the distance between them in 2 massive strides. He slams the security photo onto the plywood table. File 8B. Marcus breathes, his voice shaking with pure, unadulterated venom. "Apex Chemical. Did you give it to him already? Or were you waiting for your shift to end?" Elena stares at the photograph. Then, she looks at the man towering over her. She sees it instantly. The panic attack from 3 nights ago wasn't an isolated incident. He isn't a rational CEO right now. He is the cornered, bleeding man who lost his daughter to a liar, thoroughly convinced the entire world is built to betray him. "Richard offered me money," Elena says, her voice eerily calm. "I didn't." "Don't!" Marcus roars, slamming his fist onto the table. The brass lamp rattles. "Don't lie to me. I know exactly what you are." Elena freezes. A sudden, paralyzing coldness creeps up her spine. My security chief ran a full background check the second he saw this. Marcus spits the words out like poison. Dr. Elena Rostova, stripped of her tenure, blacklisted for academic theft. I guess Professor Evans was right about you after all. You're a fraud, a parasite who feeds off other people's work. The words hit Elena like physical blows. The old trauma, the agonizing injustice that destroyed her life rips wide open, but the tears don't come. People who have survived what she has survived do not cry when they are attacked. They go dead. Her eyes empty out. The warmth in her face vanishes completely. I picked you up out of the trash, Marcus yells, his voice cracking with a terrifying mixture of rage and grief. I gave you respect. I trusted you. And this is how you stab me in the back? Elena looks at the scattered boxes. She looks at the letter he wrote to his daughter, still sitting neatly on the edge of the desk. Finally, she looks at Marcus. You didn't give me respect, Marcus, she says. Her voice is a hollow, deadened whisper. You bought me with pity. Marcus opens his mouth to speak, but the absolute void in her eyes stops him. You needed someone broken so you could feel whole, Elena continues, her tone dropping to a chilling monotone. But I didn't sell you File 8B, and I didn't sell you my dignity. She reaches into her apron pocket. Marcus tenses, fully expecting her to pull out the missing file. Instead, she pulls out the heavy brass master key. She drops it onto the plywood table. It lands with a heavy, final thud. Your paranoia is killing you, Elena says, and I won't stick around to watch you bleed out. She doesn't yell. She doesn't demand an apology. She simply turns her back on the most powerful man in the city. She picks up her faded wool coat from the back of the chair. She walks toward the exit. Elena, Marcus says. The rage in his voice suddenly falters, replaced by a sickening drop of doubt. She doesn't stop. She doesn't look back. She steps into the hallway. The heavy steel door clicks shut behind her, the lock engaging automatically. Marcus is left standing in the dead silence of the basement, surrounded by the shredded pieces of his own life. The glass walls of the 51st floor boardroom feel like a cage. Marcus stands at the head of the long mahogany table. 3 corporate lawyers sit in dead silence. The massive screen on the wall displays the 5 p.m. evening news broadcast. This is the deadline. The exact moment Richard Sterling promised to drop the Apex chemical leak. The moment Marcus's empire is supposed to burn to the ground. Marcus watches the news ticker at the bottom of the screen. His stomach is a tight knot of dread and bitter validation. I knew it, he had told himself for 3 days. Everyone has a price. She was no different. The clock strikes 5-1, then 5-5. The anchor talks about a local election, a tech merger, the weather. Nothing happens. The door swings open. David, the head of legal, walks in. He doesn't look panicked. He looks bewildered. Turn it off, David says, gesturing to the TV. Marcus grips the edge of the table. Where is the leak, David? There is no leak, David replies, tossing his phone onto the polished wood. Sterling Communications just held an emergency vote. The board ousted Richard Sterling an hour ago. Terminated with cause. They said he was fabricating corporate espionage to boost his own stock. The room goes entirely still. What? Marcus whispers. The word barely makes it out of his throat. There is no file, David says, packing his briefcase. Sterling had nothing. It was a bluff. The floor drops out from under Marcus. He doesn't wait for David to finish. He turns and walks out of the boardroom. He moves past his stunned assistant, his pace accelerating with every step. By the time he hits the elevator bank, he is running. He slams his palm against the button for sub-basement level 4. The descent feels agonizingly slow. His heart hammers against his ribs in a sickening rhythm of realization. She didn't take it. She didn't sell me out. The elevator doors part. He sprints down the concrete hallway and throws open the heavy steel door. Elena! His voice echoes off the bare walls, harsh and desperate. But the room is empty. Marcus stops in his tracks, his breath catching in his throat. The basement is not the war zone he left behind 3 days ago. The kicked boxes are gone. The scattered papers have vanished. The room is immaculate. 50 perfectly aligned, categorized archival boxes sit in flawless symmetry. She didn't leave a mess. She finished the job. Marcus walks slowly toward the plywood table. The amber lamp is switched off. Sitting dead center on the desk is a thick, manila folder. It is wrapped securely in archival tape. Printed neatly on the spine is a single label, Apex Chemical, File 8B. Marcus's hands tremble as he reaches for it. He didn't lock this room. He didn't guard it. Elena could have taken it. She could have ruined him, paid off her crushing debts, and taken back her entire academic career. Instead, she protected a man who treated her like trash. Resting on top of the sealed folder is a small yellow post-it note. It isn't a letter of justification. It isn't an angry demand for an apology. It is just her neat, historian's handwriting. Sorting complete. I hope you find your peace. No anger, no blame, just a quiet, devastating grace. Marcus stares at the small yellow square. The absolute silence of the room presses in on him. His cynical, paranoid worldview, the armor he spent 10 years building to survive, shatters completely. His knees give out. He sinks to the cold concrete floor, clutching File 8B to his chest. The ruthless fixer who controls the world's narratives buries his face in his hands. Alone in the dark, Marcus Vance finally breaks down and weeps. The autumn wind bites through the thin walls of Elena's apartment building. It's a quiet, working-class neighborhood, a universe away from the glass towers of downtown. A heavy knock rattles her door. Elena tightens her cardigan. She opens the door just a few inches, keeping the chain lock engaged. Marcus stands in the hallway. He isn't wearing a $5,000 suit. He wears a heavy, plain sweater. He looks exhausted. The dark circles under his eyes are deep, but the paranoid, frantic edge is gone. His gaze is entirely clear. Elena keeps her hand on the doorframe. Her posture is stiff, bracing for an attack or a bribe. If David sent you with a settlement check, you can keep it, Elena says, her voice flat. I don't sign NDAs. Marcus doesn't argue. He doesn't launch into a rehearsed, public relations apology. He simply reaches into his coat and holds out a standard manila envelope. No checks, Marcus says quietly. Just this. Elena hesitates. She unhooks the chain and opens the door. She takes the envelope and pulls out a single piece of paper. It isn't a contract. It is a certified tracking receipt from the Postal Service. Elena scans the destination address. Then she reads the attached carbon copy letterhead. To the Environmental Protection Agency. Apex Chemical, Evidence Submission. Enclosed, File 8B. She stops breathing for a second. She looks up at him. Marcus, she whispers, you sent it to the federal investigators. You know what this means. I know, Marcus says. He doesn't look away. I lose my corporate license by Friday. The firm will be liquidated by the end of the month. Why? Because I spent my entire life burying the truth for terrible people, Marcus says. His voice is a low, steady rumble. I controlled everything, and everyone, so I wouldn't have to face my own failures. He puts his hands in his pockets, not aggressively, but like a man laying down his weapons. You were right, Elena, he says. I can't keep lying to myself. I can lose the company. I can lose the money, but I want to start over. He looks at her, stripped of every title and every defense. With the truth, he adds. Elena looks at the receipt in her hand, a multi-million-dollar empire intentionally burned to the ground, not for a PR stunt, not to buy her pity, but to prove he could finally trust someone without controlling them. The invisible armor she has worn for 3 years finally shatters. There is no tearful embrace, no desperate, dramatic kiss in the hallway. Instead, Elena takes a slow step back. The hard, deadened look in her eyes completely melts away. The corners of her mouth twitch, slowly lifting into a genuine, quiet smile. The first real smile he has ever seen on her face. She pulls the door open wider. "It's freezing out here, Marcus," she says softly. "Do you want to come inside for a cup of hot tea?" Marcus nods. He steps over the threshold, leaving the cold autumn wind and the ghosts of his past outside. The door clicks quietly shut. Watching that door close softly behind Marcus, I can't help but wonder, if I were Elena, would I have the grace to pour a cup of tea for the man who let his own paranoia wound me? And if I were Marcus, would I have the courage to tear down the empire I spent my entire life building just to buy back my peace of mind and a chance to start over? It reminds me of someone I knew years ago, a colleague who spent a decade ruthlessly climbing the corporate ladder, only to resign the morning he realized he couldn't recognize the cold, calculating man staring back at him in the lobby mirror. We often cling to our defenses, our impressive titles, our righteous anger, the high walls we build around our hearts, because they make us feel safe from getting hurt again. Sometimes, the price of peace isn't measured by what we gain, but by what we are willing to let go of. Marcus chose to trade his prestige to save his humanity, and Elena chose to lower her defenses to try and trust someone one more time. What about you? If you were standing in Marcus's shoes, caught between a brilliant career built on a lie and a quiet life starting completely from scratch, what would you choose? Do you think Elena was right to give him a second chance? Share your thoughts down in the comments. We all have our own archive room, a place where we hide our unspoken scars. If you appreciate stories that dive deep into human psychology and the heavy choices we make, hit that subscribe button for soul-stirring stories. I'll see you in the next one.